Welcome to our Maundy Thursday Tenebrae service. Maybe you've been to many Maundy Thursday or Tenebrae services, but maybe this is your first one. Maundy comes from the Latin word mandatum, which means command. Jesus commands his disciples to remember him whenever they eat the bread and drink the cup, to wash one another's feet in service as he did, and to love one another. Maundy Thursday is the name for the day when people remember and celebrate the Last Supper Jesus had with his friends. And that's why we'll be having communion with a wafer and juice as part of our service this evening. The word tenebrae is also Latin. A tenebrae service is observed during the final part of Holy Week, commemorating the sufferings and death of Jesus Christ, often symbolized by extinguishing candles as we read each scripture. Sometimes we do this in our church family on Good Friday, but this year we're combining two services into one this evening. In a moment, we will have the tolling of the bell, marking this somber night. We do this as a way of entering the experience that Jesus had. Our motive here tonight is not to glorify death, but to honor Jesus and his willingness to enter our experience of life in a beautiful but broken world. His suffering on the cross contains our suffering. He walks beside us, and we walk beside him. I trust that you will open your heart to encounter Jesus this evening. At the conclusion of the service, we will extinguish the Christ candle in the center and leave in silence. But I hope that you'll join us again on Easter morning when we will greet the light with joy in our hearts, because death and darkness do not have the final word.
Our first reading comes from Matthew 26, verses 6 through 13. Jesus was in Bethany. He was in the home of Simon, who had a skin disease. A woman came to Jesus with a special sealed jar of very expensive perfume. She poured the perfume on his head while he was at the table. When the disciples saw this, they became angry. "Why this waste?" they asked. The perfume could have been sold at a very high price. The money could have been given to the poor. Jesus was aware of this, so he said to them, "Why are you bothering this woman? She has done a beautiful thing to me. You will always have poor people with you, but you will not always have me. She poured the perfume on my body to prepare me to be buried. What I'm about to tell you is true. What she has done will be told anywhere this good news is preached all over the world. It will be told in memory of her."
If you would like to stand, you may. We're going to sing the hymn, "There is a Balm in Gilead." It's number 501, and the words are also in your bulletin.
Reading 2 is from Matthew 26, 17 through 25, and it's the Last Supper. It was the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The disciples came to Jesus. They asked, "Where do you want us to prepare for you to eat the Passover meal?" He replied, "Go into the city to a certain man. Tell him, 'The teacher says, my time is near. I am going to celebrate the Passover at your house with my disciples." So the disciples did what Jesus had told them to do. They prepared the Passover meal. When evening came, Jesus was at the table with his 12 disciples. While they were eating, he said, "What I'm about to tell you is true. One of you will hand me over to my enemies." The disciples became very sad. One after the other, they began to say to him, "Surely you don't mean me, Lord, do you?" Jesus replied, "The one who has dipped his hand into the bowl with me will hand me over. The Son of Man will go just as it is written about him. But how terrible it would be for the one who hands over the Son of Man. It would be better for him if he had not been born." Judas was the one who was going to hand him over. He said, "Surely you don't mean me, teacher, do you?" Jesus answered, "You have said so."
You might like to remain seated for this one. You can imagine yourself at the table. But if you'd like to open your hymnal to 428. The song is called "An Upper Room with Evening Lamps Ashine." I'll be reading from Matthew 26, verses 26 to 30. While they were eating, Jesus took the bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it. He handed it to his disciples and said, "Take this and eat it. This is my body. You may take and eat." Then he took a cup, and he gave thanks and handed it to them. And he said, "All of you drink from it. This is my blood of the covenant. It is poured out to forgive the sins of many people. Here is what I tell you. From now on, I won't drink wine with you again until the day I drink it with you in my Father's kingdom. You can take and drink. Then they sang a hymn, and they went to the Mount of Olives.
I'll be doing reading number 3, Matthew 26, 31 through 46. Jesus prays in the garden. Jesus told them, "This very night you will all turn away because of me. It is written that the Lord said, 'I will strike the shepherd down, then the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I rise from the dead, I will go ahead of you into Galilee.' Peter replied, 'All the others may turn away because of you, but I never will.' 'What I'm about to tell you is true,' Jesus answered. 'It will happen tonight. Before the rooster crows, you will say 3 times that you don't know me.' But Peter said, 'I may have to die with you, but I will never say I don't know you.' And all the other disciples said the same thing. Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane. He said to them, 'Sit here while I go over there and pray.' He took Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee along with him. He began to be sad and troubled. Then he said to them, 'My soul is very sad. I feel close to death. Stay here. Keep watch with me.' He went a little farther. Then he fell with his face to the ground. He prayed, 'My Father, if it is possible, take this cup of suffering away from me. But let what you want be done, not what I want.' Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. 'Couldn't you men keep watch for me for 1 hour?' he asked Peter. 'Watch and pray. Then you won't fall into sin when you are tempted. The spirit is willing, but the body is weak.' Jesus went away a second time. He prayed, 'My Father, is it possible for this cup to be taken away? But if I must drink it, may what you want be done.' Then he came back. Again he found them sleeping. They couldn't keep their eyes open. So he left them and went away once more. For the 3rd time he prayed the same thing. Then he returned to the disciples. He said to them, 'Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour has come. The Son of Man is about to be handed over to sinners. Get up, let us go. Here comes the one who is handing me over to them.'"
You can remain seated, but you might like to open your hymnal, if you have it, to 194. And notice, if you are singing from the hymnal, that we're going to sing verses 1, 2, and 4.
This is reading 4 from Matthew 26, verses 47 to 68. Jesus' arrest and trial. While Jesus was still speaking, Judas arrived. He was one of the 12 disciples. A large crowd was with him. They were carrying swords and clubs. The chief priests and the elders of the people had sent them. Judas, who was going to hand Jesus over, had arranged a signal with them. "The one I kiss is the man," he said. "Arrest him." So Judas went to Jesus at once. He said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and he kissed him. Jesus replied, "Friend, do what you came to do." Then the men stepped forward. They grabbed Jesus and arrested him. At that moment, one of Jesus' companions reached for his sword. He pulled it out and struck the slave of the high priest with it. He cut off the slave's ear. "Put your sword back in its place," Jesus said to him. "All who use the sword will die by the sword. Do you think I can't ask my Father for help? He would send an army of more than 70,000 angels right away. But then, how would the scriptures come true? They say it must happen this way." At that time, Jesus spoke to the crowd. "Am I leading a band of armed men against you?" he asked. "Do you have to come out with swords and clubs to capture me? Every day I sat in the temple courtyard teaching, and you didn't arrest me. But all this has happened so that the words of the prophets would come true." Then all the disciples left him and ran away. Those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas, the high priest. The teachers of the law and the elders had come together there. Not too far away, Peter followed Jesus. He went right up to the courtyard of the high priest. He entered and sat down with the guards to see what would happen. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for something to use against Jesus. They wanted to put him to death. But they did not find any proof, even though many false witnesses came forward. Finally, 2 other witnesses came forward. They said, "This fellow claimed, 'I am able to destroy the temple of God. I can build it again in 3 days.'" Then the high priest stood up. He asked Jesus, "Aren't you going to answer? What are these charges that these men are bringing against you?" But Jesus remained silent. The high priest said to him, "I am commanding you in the name of the living God. May he judge you if you don't tell the truth. Tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God." "You have said so," Jesus replied, "but here is what I say to all of you. From now on you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One. You will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven." Then the high priest tore his clothes. He said, "He has spoken a very evil thing against God. Why do we need any more witnesses? You have heard him say this evil thing. What do you think?" "He must die," they answered. Then they spit in his face. They hit him with their fists. Others slapped him. They said, "Prophesy to us, Messiah. Who hit you?"
If you would like to stand for this one, you may, or you may remain seated. It's 202 in the hymnal, "O Sacred Head Now Wounded." With This is Matthew 26, 69 to 75 at the fire. Peter was sitting out in the courtyard. A female servant came to him. "You were also with Jesus of Galilee," she said. But in front of all of them, Peter said he was not. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said. Then he went out to the gate leading into the courtyard. There, another servant saw him. She said to the people, "This fellow was with Jesus of Nazareth." Again, he said he was not. With a curse, he said, "I don't know the man." After a little while, those standing there went up to Peter. "You must be one of them," they said. "The way you talk gives you away." Then Peter began to curse and said to them, "I don't know the man." Right away, a rooster crowed. Then Peter remembered what Jesus had said. "The rooster will crow," Jesus had told him. "Before it does, you will say 3 times that you don't know me." Peter went outside. He broke down and cried. We're just going to sing one verse of "Were You There?" It's 198.
I have reading 6, Matthew 27, 1 and 2, and 12 through 26. Jesus' sentence to death. It was early in the morning. All the chief priests and the elders of the people planned how to put Jesus to death. So they tied him up and led him away. Then they handed him over to Pilate, who was the governor. Jesus was standing in front of the governor. The governor asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Yes, you have said so," Jesus replied. But when the chief priests and the elders brought charges against him, he did not answer. Then Pilate asked him, "Don't you hear the charges they are bringing against you?" But Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge. The governor was really amazed. It was the governor's practice at the Passover feast to let one prisoner go free. The people could choose the one they wanted. At that time, they had a well-known prisoner named Jesus Barabbas. So when the crowd gathered, Pilate asked them, "Which one do you want me to set free? Jesus Barabbas or Jesus, who was called the Messiah?" Pilate knew that the leaders wanted to get their own way. He knew this is why they had handed Jesus over to him. While Pilate was sitting on the judge's seat, his wife sent him a message. It said, "Don't have anything to do with that man. He is not guilty. I have suffered a great deal in a dream today because of him." But the chief priests and the elders talked to the crowd into asking for Barabbas and having Jesus put to death. "Which of the two do you want me to set free?" asked the governor. "Barabbas," they answered. "Then what should I do with Jesus, who's called the Messiah?" Pilate asked. They all answered, "Crucify him." "Why? What wrong has he done?" asked Pilate. But they shouted even louder, "Crucify him." Pilate saw that he wasn't getting anywhere. Instead, the crowd was starting to get angry. So he took water and washed his hands in front of them. "I am not guilty of this man's death. You are accountable for that." All the people answered, put the blame for his death on us and our children. Pilate let Barabbas go free, but he had Jesus whipped. Then he handed him over to be nailed to a cross.
Reading number 7 is from Matthew 27, 27 to 43. Jesus is crucified. The governor's soldiers took Jesus into the palace, which was called the Praetorium. All the rest of the soldiers gathered around him. They took off his clothes and put a purple robe on him. Then they twisted thorns together to make a crown. They placed it on his head. They put a stick in his right hand. Then they fell on their knees in front of him and made fun of him. "We honor you, King of the Jews," they said. They spit on him. They hit him on the head with the stick again and again. After they had made fun of him, they took off the robe. They put his own clothes back on him. Then they led him away to nail him to a cross. On their way out of the city, they met a man from Cyrene. His name was Simon. They forced him to carry the cross. They came to a place called Golgotha. The word Golgotha means the place of the skull. There they mixed wine with bitter spices and gave it to Jesus to drink. After tasting it, he refused to drink it. When they had nailed him to the cross, they divided up his clothes by casting lots. Then they sat down and kept watch over him there. Above his head, they placed the written charge against him. It read, "This is Jesus, King of the Jews." 2 rebels against Rome were crucified with him. One was on his right and one was on his left. Those who passed by shouted at Jesus and made fun of him. They shook their heads and said, "So you are going to destroy the temple and build it up again in 3 days? Then save yourself. Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God." In the same way, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders made fun of him. "He saved others," they said, "but he can't save himself. He's the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross. Then we will believe him. He trusts in God. Let God rescue him now if he wants him. He is the one who said, 'I am the Son of God.'"
I invite you to stand if you would like to. This is our final song of the evening. It's 195 in the hymnal, "When I Survey the Wondrous Cross."
From noon until 3:00, the whole land was covered with darkness. About 3:00, Jesus cried out in a loud voice. He said, "Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani." This means, my God, why have you deserted me?" Some of those standing there heard Jesus cry out. They said, "He's calling for Elijah." Right away, one of them ran and got a sponge. He filled it with wine vinegar and put it on a stick. He offered it to Jesus to drink. The rest said, "Leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to save him." After Jesus cried out again in a loud voice, he died.